Approval of the minutes of the Public Works Committee meeting held on May 8th, 2018. A second. All in favor? Aye. Number 3, discuss Public Works fleet vehicle purchase list. John?
Yes, sir. Annually, we get our budget approved for, obviously, fleet additions to the village-wide purchases. And, we discussed the necessity to put these purchases on a committee and board agenda, even though some of them are state purchase and of the like. We're at the point in this year where we're looking at the larger pieces of largest pieces of equipment. And as you see on the list, we're just looking for the, list to be approved to proceed with purchases of that equipment that was, again, previously approved in the budget process.
Looking for approval from us
Yes, sir.
tonight to
Yes.
proceed?
Proceed and
Anyone have any questions on that?
Nope.
Make a motion to proceed as recommended. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? 4, discuss ComEd recreational lease, multi-use recreational path agreement. John, or Dave?
Sure,
I'm sorry.
yeah. So, I guess everyone knows there's a bike path that we maintain under a ComEd property over between 80th and 84th Avenue. There's actually a lease on it that expired a few years ago. There was some concerns about some essentially environmental language in the agreement that essentially ComEd was putting in all their standard agreements that essentially says if there's some type of spill in the area, it was our responsibility. Mike Mertens was handling it, he left, and we've been talking to ComEd. In the meantime, we have a grant that we received to rehabilitate the path, and we really need, before we can move forward with the grant, we actually have to have a signed agreement. So we've worked with ComEd, or we tried to get ComEd to make some changes, and basically their answer was, this is kind of our standard agreement. So the language is still in there. I talked with Pat Connolly about it. I mean, it's one of those that it's a rather minor risk, and at this point, we do need to move forward with the grant. So I'm asking the committee to recommend that we put the lease on the next agenda.
Any questions of anyone on the committee?
So it's the same lease as it's always been, Dave?
Well, no, there's some verbiage differences. Yeah, and that was one of the more noteworthy ones. There were some other changes which we were really fine with, but they did add some language that said basically if there's, we could have responsibility if there's environmental cleanup around the path, even if it's something that a resident or user had to do, we would be responsible for it. So
No, so this language is new from the last.
this is new from yeah.
And
they were
village
adding it-
has the right of way under the ComEd lines, right? That's what you're talking about?
Yes, yeah, we have we maintain the right of way. Obviously, we maintain the path and we cut the grass around it. So,
So what are they talking about? If a resident spills something, or
could be resident, non-resident, yeah.
is it
yeah.
something that's there prior to the path being there, or is it just,
Basically, they're just saying that if there's some type of environmental cleanup, that it's basically gonna be the village's responsibility. There's nothing there now, it's just, I think it sounds like it's something that ComEd lawyers put this in all their contracts. What we've heard is there was, and I don't have this factually down, but several years ago, there was some incident around a path, and ComEd made a corporate decision to add this to all their leases, and so
so it's take it or leave it, you want the right of way, you gotta have.
we're paying $1 for the lease, okay? So,
Right, no, I.
yeah.
Pat, what's our?
I'd prefer, Dave and I discussed this a while, I'd prefer it's not in there, but this is what ComEd is doing. They haven't been willing to budge. We've looked at it. We do, I think with their, if we're out there, we have contractors fixing stuff and something happens, I think the risk is minimal.
Well, we ought to be liable for our stuff. I'm just wondering about their stuff. I suppose you could always dispute it if it comes up.
Correct. It's just they're not budging on it. It's a standard language issue from ComEd. Again, is there some risk? Sure. But with a $1 lease and, I don't believe there to be a huge risk on it. And we don't really have another option, I guess. We tried to get them to come off it, and they won't.
All right. Fair enough, thanks. Appreciate that, yes. No, here it is, I got it.
Any other comments? If not, do a motion to add that to the next agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
5, discuss backflow prevention program. John?
Yes, sir, thank you. Currently, the Public Works Department is responsible for management of the backflow prevention, or RPZ program. The IEPA requires us to keep all of the backflow devices in town tested annually and then documented and maintained as such. We currently have one of our clerks doing all of the background work of it. It takes her approximately 600 to 700 hours a year to chase down all the customers that we currently have with the RPZ. I did a rough count right now, and we have just under 4,500 RPZs in town that, again, we have to contact each resident with them, notify them of the necessity of a test to be done. And, if they're not getting the test done, we have to chase after them and make sure that they are getting them done. So it's a lot of background management. The cost of the mailings, the cost of the clerk to do so, caused us to look into alternative methods for this management. We contacted a company called BSI Online, which is strictly a management company that does all of this through an online access. And then at any point, if EPA does an audit on our backflow device program, they're there to represent us with that documentation. And again, with research, as you see with the attached documentation, it's pretty evident that Tinley Park is one of the only towns around here that is doing this in-house. So as you look at this list, we started to discuss with BSI Online some of the cost packages for having them manage this program. And based on, as you see in my memo, we've got 4 cost packages. So essentially, if a resident needs their RPZ tested, they would pay for the plumber to come in. He's going to have a flat rate fee for the testing. And then from that point, he's going to go online, submit the test results to BSI Online. BSI, based on the 4,500 RPZs, has a rate structure that they put together. And we can either go from the village paying $295 per RPZ all the way up to $1,295, which is the full cost of individual maintenance of this. Again, based on the schedule of what all the other towns around us are doing. There's, I think, in this whole list, it looks like about 50 towns. There's maybe 6 that took on the full burden of the fee. To the standard being the $1,295. So again, these are the 4 cost rates. If you look at if the village pays for all of the management in-house, it's going to be $58,750. If we go down to only paying a portion of the costs, where the resident would add $10 to their testing fee, and the village pays $3 for the management, it would cost us a lump sum of $13,275. So I'm looking for the committee's recommendation as to which package they would prefer, and then bring this to board for contract approval.
Basically, every town around us, I don't think anybody besides us is doing it in-house
Yes, sir.
anymore.
Again, in the attached list, there's 50 communities surrounding us, and the standard is $1,295 that community chose for the resident to add the $1,295 to their testing fee. And again, there's a few here and there. Some are $995, but again, for the package of the no fee, there's only 6 out of the 50. For example, Glenview, Harwood Heights, I'm trying to think of South Elgin, Villa Park, and Wood River are the communities that did not charge their residents additional fees. But again, we are one of the few communities in this area that is actually taking this, internal.
Which is the package number for the 13,000?
The $13,275 would be a cost share of the resident paying an additional $10 for their test, and the village would pay $3 per resident for the test. And then the flat rate fee of $13,275.
Is that what you're recommending then?
Again, I put all 4 packages on there. The cheapest cost to the village as a lump sum would be that package, which would be option 4.
Does anybody have any other opinion on that? Are they fine with that package? Or if that's the case, make a motion to add that to the next agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Number 6, discuss PBX and phone system upgrade. John, again.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Currently, the phone system that is housed in all 21 facilities of the Village of Tinley Park has been around for, I believe, almost 20 years here now, with the same brand that was here previous to that, but this was updated with a failure 20 years ago. Again, antiquated equipment. We're looking to replace the existing phones to the newer IP-based phones, which would reduce our need for the copper infrastructure. It's going to give you a new digital user format, ability to cross-connect audio and video in a conference setting. It's got a lot of the bells and whistles with new technology. We went out to RFP. We had 3 respondents. We interviewed multiple times with the subcommittee that was created amongst Public Works and IT Department. And with that subcommittee, we make the recommendation to offer the contract to Telecom Innovations Group, which is also known as TIG, for a contract cost of $355, not to exceed, for the whole project. And this came in approximately $100,000 under what our original estimated cost was for a full village switch out.
So this will cover everything, all buildings?
Village-wide.
Any questions to that?
It's all of our facilities?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, it's a village-wide system, because once we remove the PBX that we currently have, you know, the peripheral devices are no longer usable.
And is this a budgeted item? I mean, we.
Yes,
did it
sir.
this year, okay.
John, you said it was 100,000 under budget?
Approximately.
What's the 60, 70,000 in the other features?
Where are you referring to? I'm
Under
sorry.
the budget, finance says total project cost, and it says base cost, is revised type.
Oh, the facility cabling. So going to IP-based phones, you know, some of our existing wall-hanging phones are just an old 2-wire, you know, infrastructure where we need to upgrade to, you know, Cat 6 infrastructure, again, network-based phones. Additional features, some of the upgrades for the conference phones, some of the infrastructure upgrades, and then the contingency, as with any construction, you know, we do try to put a contingency on there in case, you know, as they're starting to dig into the nuts and bolts of it, if something comes up that wasn't in the original scope, that allows us to extend the, you know, field correction for that scope adjustment.
Okay. So it's possible we could get close to the original number.
Well, if you look at the breakdown, their bid was $289, and then we have the bid for, we had an additional contractor bid on the facility cabling. That was their number. And then, like I said, the additional features were an adjustment in their bid for, you know, peripheral upgrades. And then the contingency is that breakdown. So if we don't have any field corrections and we don't utilize this contingency, essentially this cost could be $325. But, you know, again, we're just asking for approval for the contract not to exceed the $355, and gives us the room for, again, any field corrections we have to make.
Thanks, John.
Any other questions? Not to a motion to add this to the next agenda?
Second.
Second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Number 7, discuss LED street lighting replacement Phase 2 project. John?
Yes, sir. As you're aware, a couple years ago, we went out to bid for replacing our street lighting with LED, the new technology. This allows us a 2/3 savings in energy consumption, and also allows us to be part of the Smart Cities movement. It gives us online access to the actual updates of the streetlights, as opposed to requiring the residents to call in any outages. It gives us a email notification of the outage. It's an ongoing process right now. Went out to bid. Mead was the apparent low bidder, and we're just requesting the committee approval to you know, move forward with Phase 2 of this installation.
We'll have to use the same company or same product that we've got currently.
Yes, sir. The specifications were spelled out that we're going to be matching the same light heads that we, you know, have done in the previous installation, which was approximately 500 light heads. I believe this scope calls for just under 300 light heads. And we're just, you know, picking a section of town at a time and just sweeping across town,
Okay.
replacing them.
Any questions on LED lighting? I'd like to make a motion to add this to the next agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Number 8, receive comments from the public. Anyone wish to address the board in regards to anything on the Public Works Committee agenda this evening? Let the record show there is none. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye. I'd like to call to order the Public Safety Committee at 6:45 on today's date, June 12, 2018. I'd like to consider the approval of the minutes of the Public Safety Committee meeting held on May 8, 2018. All those in favor? Did I get a motion?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, number 3, discuss the secondary facility and scope discussions for the fire station number 2. Chief, you and I talked about this today. Would you take this one?
Sure. Thank you, Trustee Brady. Actually, John and I will both be presenting a couple of pieces of updated information here for you. Just a brief update on the ongoing discussions we've been having with our design and construction team regarding the temporary relocation of the crews and the apparatus during the construction and the demolition and construction phase of our new Station 47. We've looked at as many possible temporary sites as we can possibly find, and unfortunately, we haven't been able to find anything that's been suitable that keeps us within our primary strategic goal of trying to be within a 4 to 6 minute response time from anywhere that we're at in the village. So that put us in a little bit of a decision point in order to continue to stay on track with our construction schedule as it's laid out right now. The first step, obviously, is to begin the process of vacating the current structure, housing the current crews and the equipment in a temporary structure so demolition and reconstruction can begin. So what we're presenting to you this evening are two separate options that really achieve two goals. Number one is the temporary relocation of the crews and the equipment. And secondarily to that, we've been able to explore at the direction of the village manager's office, which I think is an excellent idea here. Instead of leasing equipment for the storage of the vehicles, we're going to present a couple of options here that I'll ask John to explain a little bit with you. That's going to allow the village to retain the structures after the temporary housing, which would give us the flexibility to take those structures to Public Works to utilize for salt storage, vehicle storage. If further down the road we reconstructed Station 48, a little further down the road, we already have a temporary structure available to us. So we think it brings additional value at really a nominal cost that is already included in the first phase of the construction project. So the memo that you're looking at right now does actually has changed a couple of times during the course of the day today. Our construction manager, the Wegman Corporation company, worked really hard with the two vendors that we have, both of them being out of state, and they were both able to provide us with some updated information today. That if you're looking at the second page of your memo with the pictures of the structures, those things remain the same. We just now have included two different options for two different styles of building for you to consider. So, John, you want to take the next piece there between B and D there?
Yes, sir. So as the chief discussed there, we got two options of a facility that we're looking at. And, we asked Wegman to, exhaust all options available here. And as in the picture, you have what is considered a C-span type of temporary structure. And then you have, essentially what is a pole barn looking facility for the other type of structure. We looked at the possibility of rental of either facility, and we looked at the possibility of either lease to own or purchase. And as you see in the spreadsheet in front of you, you have the four options. The Exhibit A is the C-span facility that gives the heating and lighting and necessary appliances to construct that. The problem is with that being a lower facility, it does not allow clearance for a roll-up door. But that did, allow for, like a cloth material curtain for the apparatus to drive through. With concerns of security, we kind of recommend against that one, but we figured we'd put it on here as an offer for understanding of what cost comparison is. Exhibit B on your spreadsheet is the same C-span type of building. It's a little bit larger in overall footprint and elevation to allow for the electric roll-up doors, and that is for purchase. Exhibit C is what we're calling the McAfee facility, which is the manufacturer of this facility. Again, that goes more of the square boxed out facility. It is the lease price, so after this project is done, they would come and pack it up and take it away from them. And then Exhibit D is that same facility, which is a lease-to-own price. As you can see by the bottom dollar, it is just a $20,000 increase for lease-to-own. Currently, the chief and I's discussion with the director or village manager is to look at Exhibit D as our recommendation. This allows us to utilize the facility after construction, either at Public Works where we have a storage shortage, and if the possibility does come years down the line for reconstruction of Fire Station 3 that was in the initial discussion, this can be deconstructed at any site and be reutilized again for the secondary construction at the next location.
Where would this be located? The temporary structure?
The temporary structure right now, in the preliminary design phase, we have the empty lot that the village owns next to the existing station. To the east of the station, that eventually, once the new station is constructed, will be the parking for the public as well as our crew over on the east side of the building over there. So that lot would be constructed now, the temporary building, and the crew's quarters, which is in the construction trailer, would be located on that during the entire demolition and construction phase. And then once we're ready to move in there, that's when we would go through the disassembly and removal, and they would, finish up, getting the parking lot back in, regular finish order at the end of the project there.
Right.
Chief Wood will be in there, just the engine and the ambulance?
Yes, and a couple of service vehicles, yes, sir.
Okay.
Now, just so you understand, the recommended price of the $187,300, that is the temporary facility, and it's a flat rate across all four of these options, is the cost for the bunkhouse trailer. So the living quarters also would be adjacent to this. So as you can see on line, I think it's item 3 here, the $60,000 to lease the bunkhouse. That we don't see being advantageous to lease to own or utilize this after the construction of the facility. So this cost does include the living quarters for the time of the construction.
There's plenty of room for all this, and then away from the construction site and the houses next door?
Yes, sir.
Can I give you a timeline on how it would build the structure, how long it would take?
To assemble the temporary structure,
Yeah.
less than a week.
Oh, really?
Yes, yeah, it's all prefabricated. It comes up from, well, depending on the option, which one. One comes from Florida and the other one is out of Tennessee, I believe it is. It's about a week to 10 days of construction time because it's all prefabricated.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
John, this $80,000, does any of that include the installation or any of the work for the electric, the heaters, the
Sewers?
Again, can you point me where you're referring to the $80,000?
option 1?
Option 1, delivered and installed on which item?
Purchase C-span structure and lease a construction trailer. The estimated cost for the
Oh,
option is
okay.
$125 plus
Yeah,
options,
that's-
and then you list the $80,000.
Yeah, that takes care of all the appliances, your lights, electric, roll-up doors, all of that equipment that's required to make this a usable facility.
But that's the labor. That $80,000 covers the cost and the labor too.
Yes.
Okay.
And that should be, again, meeting all our prevailing wage requirements.
We haven't discussed it, but how about the showers and
That's
bathroom facilities?
that's in the temporary construction trailer, yes. The one you see pictured is actually the one that is in use right now up at the Elk Grove Village Fire Department. They're currently housing 6 firefighter paramedics in that exact structure,
Oh, okay.
using the same firm that we're using, so it's already a proven, good enough to get us
It's
by
workable.
during the construction phase, yes, sir.
That was going to be my question. Has anybody done this before, and
Yes, sir.
have they been
Yeah,
able to run a fire?
In a previous life, I've lived in one, during
no
the
kidding.
demolition and construction period, so it's, it's, the prize at the end is worth the, worth a little bit of time there, so, yes, sir.
You went up there?
Yes, sir. Yeah, those are my pictures there from.
This Exhibit D, John?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that we add Exhibit D pricing for the temporary facility to the next agenda.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We'd like to discuss the item number 4, Police Commander Ordinance.
Sure. Thanks, Trustee Brady. I think as you all know that in the budget, there's several new officers, including a police commander. that was added in the budget. We've been moving forward on hiring the officers. As we've been preparing the job description for the commander, it was noted that the way the ordinance is currently written is that the only positions that are currently allowed to be non-civil service positions are deputy chief and the chief of police. Typically, management positions are usually not through civil service. And so one of the challenges is obviously the civil, besides the fact that you typically don't want to see a management position in civil service because you want to be able to have some discretion, is the time frame that it would take to hire this position. The civil service process will add several months to the process. So our request is really to change the code and essentially allow this position to be hired through the village recruitment process. So that would require an ordinance change at the next meeting.
So we would have, so you want to do the commander position, not civil service?
Correct.
So we would have the commander, we would have the deputy chief and the police chief?
3 positions, yep.
All appointed?
Yeah, everything below that would be still through civil service.
And what would be the, would there be any guidelines for this position? I mean, you know usually how they step up the ranks. Is there anything going to be listed in this to become a commander? I mean, do you have to hit all the other, go through the ranks?
Well, there's a job description that'll have a list of experience and education, and you can, I don't have it in front of me, but you can get
Like, for example, would you have to be a sergeant before you can go to commander?
No.
So
No.
you could,
No, and
you could bypass the sergeants then?
correct. Yeah, no, that's not part of the job description.
And-
It's a combination of experience and education. I don't remember the number of years, but, yeah.
So why not go through civil service then?
For a position like this, you typically, well,
Wasn't in civil service before.
huh?
The commander wasn't in civil service.
Okay, I guess it was never in civil service when the position originally existed.
I get it, but now we're still gonna have 2 tiers then. We're gonna have deputy chief and commander then. Back then, how did it go?
Well, you'll have 3 tiers. You'll have
Chief,
chief,
did it
deputy
go-
chief, and commander.
Sergeant, commander, chief, and then they eliminated the commander, and then added deputy chief in its place, correct?
Correct.
But now we're going to have commander, deputy chief. I don't see why we would
Before you
change
had
it.
2 deputy chiefs and the chief, now you have chief, deputy chief, and commander.
How many
So it's
commanders
three-
did you
three-
have before it was changed?
At one time, maximum, we had, at one time had 4. The norm was 3, and then one time we had 2, so it's just, maximum we had 4 at one time.
The only problem with the non-civil service is then it's an appointed position. And then you don't have to, there's no,
Well, the board still has to approve the appointment. But typically in a management position, it would be very unusual, I think, to see a civil service position for a position like this.
yeah, but just, I understand that, but just now we would have 3 different levels of appointments within the police department.
Yes.
That is typical. As far as police departments, usually civil service is just patrolmen and sergeants. That's the typical civil service procedure. They usually don't go too much above that. Some-
Yeah.
There may be a few that do, but it's not the norm. Normally,
Yeah.
it's.
No, in my experiences with police and fire commissions, and the acting chief is correct, it's,
No, I
It's just-
understand, thanks, chief.
it's just not a standard
It just
practice.
now we don't have, I'm assuming you went from commander to deputy chief.
In my case, no, I went,
there was no command.
there was no commander when I went up. so.
Oh, okay. But then now we're gonna have 3 different levels though, instead of the 2. Okay. Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question? Is this a position that we haven't had for a while and we're bringing back? So we're sort of creating a new position from that study, I'm guessing?
Yes.
And we just got to decide whether to classify it under civil service or not?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
We'll double check. We'll make sure all promotional rules and contracts are everything's.
Yeah,
you know,
just I wanna-
We'll have our labor attorneys look at that as well.
And with it being non-civil service, then Dave, there would be no tests or anything like to become a police officer or sergeant. It would just be appointment only.
It's appointment, yeah, I mean, obviously, like any management position, there's interview process, I mean, there is going to be a process to go through, but
Does it normally come from internal candidates, or we're not recruiting outside for this, are we, or?
at
what's
this
the
point, we're
thought?
looking internally.
Okay.
Motion to add this to the next agenda.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Item number 5, any comments from the public on the agenda this evening on public safety?
Good evening. Concerning the commander position, so there's going to be no set protocol that is in line with what the police contract is now as far as promotions are concerned?
Well, the police, you're talking about the police union contract? Or I'm
Right.
not sure when you say the police
Right,
contract.
as far as the protocol set in the contract, how a
No, and again,
promotion
this
or
is,
advancement.
we would hire this, like with the police chief, deputy police chief, commander, I mean, we would still have an interview process, we'll
Right.
still have some,
Right.
but it's not tied into the union contract at all, so.
So, in theory, a patrol officer could leapfrog over a sergeant, detective, and any other position in between that of a patrol officer and a commander, is what you're saying.
Well, depending on the amount of experience they have, I mean, it's not written that it's only a sergeant that could be in there, depending on their level of experience, it's possible that somebody besides a sergeant.
Don't you
Yeah.
think that could create a great deal of animosity within the police department, especially someone who's passed the sergeant's test or whatever other test to advance within the department? If a patrol officer who's never had to go through any of that type of testing or meet any type of criteria,
Well, no, but they would have to meet the criteria that's in the job description, and again, I don't remember in front of me how much we put in terms of years of experience, and, yeah, but there is criteria in there, so I don't want to make you think there's no criteria. One of the criteria is, not that they have to be a sergeant, but there is criteria for experience and education in there. So,
Right, and I
it
understand,
typically,
yeah.
if they get a combination, they don't meet one category, but they meet another, and you get the combination of it, they can meet
Right.
it, so.
but within the police contract, is there not specific, in order to advance positions, you have to meet certain requirements or tests to move forward?
That's what.
I think the confusing part is when you're saying contract. The only contract is the patrolman's contract, which really would only talk about going up to the level of sergeant.
Okay,
Brand new
right.
position, So it probably wouldn't have anything to do, as an example, it doesn't, I don't believe it mentions anything about going up to my position. And at one time, that's what you went from sergeant to deputy.
Because you're not civil service, though.
Correct.
They are,
Who?
the patrolmen and the sergeants.
Right. But
Okay.
It was never, yes, the only thing that, I don't even know if it's mentioned in the contract, to tell you the truth, of anything about the promotional process.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
And it's something that's what I mentioned, we're gonna be looking at that too, make
Well, I
sure
mean, the
we're not
only,
gonna walk
I was
into
looking
agreements.
on the police site today, and it just will show, the title, your start pay, and what you can top out at. And you just see the amounts that the different officers, part-time officers, investigators, sergeants, deputy chief, how much they receive. I mean, when you look at this and you see an hourly salary or an hourly payment, it kind of gives you a hierarchy that, okay, I can get to here and make this much. Now, if I advance, I can make this much, and I advance and I can make this much. My point is, I'm assuming that commander is going to fall under the deputy chiefs, that the ranking. So if you've got a patrol officer who leapfrogs over all of those ahead of him just in pay, it's going to create animosity within, I feel, animosity within the departments. And maybe there's officers of, maybe an officer and a sergeant of equal experience, but you would think it would go to the sergeant because of the higher ranking. Do you know what I mean by the hierarchy? That, just like it is in private. It's just, I know, my 4 minutes is up. It's just, my point I'm trying to make is, I hope it's given to the most experienced and the most qualified person, as opposed to just because of not having specific requirements, such as you have to be a sergeant for this many years, and because that goes with being able to manage people and
There is criteria that they'll need to meet.
okay.
So, yeah.
I've
All
got
right.
a follow-up
Thank you.
question, if I
Yes.
could. Is it possible we could add some kind of testing criteria and assessment? You know how they do those assessments? What would you do under this circumstance? What would you do under
Like an
that?
assessment center?
Well, I mean, if you're gonna look at the whole population of patrolmen and sergeants to decide who moves up, some kind of a test to, you know what I mean, some kind of criteria to say not only do you have to have this much experience, but you also have to score on the test, and you also have to do okay on this assessment. Like, you know how we did that, I think, with the fire chief. Didn't you do some type of assessment? I mean, just so we know that this candidate is
Yeah.
the right
I
guy
mean,
in
it's-
addition to the other.
Again, at this point, we're working on getting the ad out. We can certainly add
Yeah.
something like that in there, but I think I would just point out with management, you don't want to get into a situation where you're picking people based on points. And frankly, it's one of the weaknesses of our whole Civil Service Commission, is that when you start picking any job just based on scoring and testing points, you don't know that you're necessarily getting the best person, especially when you get to management. So there's always going to be this, as we went through with the fire chief. I mean, we went through the whole process, but ultimately we chose, because we really like Forrest.
No, I get it. There's a difference, there's a difference between
Yes.
management and the other, but maybe just some kind
Yeah.
of base testing to make sure you got a qualified candidate.
Yeah, there should, you should at least have it should be at least the equivalent of a sergeant as far as qualifications, since that will be the step below a commander.
Truthfully, the sergeant qualifications, I believe, is 5 years on the job as a patrolman, and that's it. That's the only qualification to be a sergeant, is that you have to have 5 years on the department.
But also they passed the test and they
They said there is a test, but yeah,
So I'm
as far as
sure-
qualifications go, it's just the five.
in passing the test.
Right.
Because I'm sure a lot of people have taken it, probably not passed it, and that's probably maybe why they didn't make it to that level yet.
Well,
So that's why I agree kind of with what Mike's saying.
I think, going back to what Dave's saying, I think he expressed it pretty well. I think what we want to avoid, testing tends to bring out just someone who may have tests very well. What we want is to make sure we get the best candidates, especially when you're talking about a management position. I want to pick the best guy or gal to be the next commander, not based upon the fact that they did really well on a written test. And I think that's where we have to be, I think Dave expressed, well, you have to be very careful. We want the most qualified person who has the best chance of success in that position. And for me, I'm one who did very well on a test that got me where I'm at. So, like I said, and this is coming from someone who I think, once again, I think we need to be very careful about making it too much dependent on a test.
Well, I'm not saying civil
I-
service. I'm just saying, how do you get that best candidate? You can't go duck, duck, goose. You gotta have some kind of procedure.
So it's almost like a double-edged sword then. I mean, so they would be saying some of the patrolmen then that,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
they take the test, and so maybe they weren't the best police officers, but they did well in the test. I mean, that's why the system's in place.
I understand. Like I said, I don't think there's one perfect way of doing it, but for this position, once again, I would like to consider someone's work history more than how they do on a test. I'd like to see, I think supervision is important. Believe me, if I had two perfectly equal people. But one of the things that we're making kind of an assumption here, and I can't say that for, if we have two commanders positions, I can't guarantee I have two sergeants who put in for them. I don't know, because we haven't put the ad out.
Well, we're advertising, we're sending it out.
Yeah,
right?
well, and once we get it out, once again, I do think that, that's one of the factors you should be weighing. When you decide on a commander, has he been a sergeant before, that'd definitely be one of those factors that leans in his favor when you're considering the totality of the circumstances of whether this is the best guy or not. That would be one of the things, but it doesn't necessarily be the only one.
I'm not saying that
Yeah,
this is a position that ought to go through civil service. I think it's high enough management. Is it possible you kind of put together that criteria or see what other towns are doing for these upper but not really upper management positions? Some kind of base criteria. So I think I hear the concern that they're afraid people with lesser skills may leapfrog others, and just see what other towns are doing and give us some kind of criteria. So, I mean, if you want us to write an ordinance, we got to have something in it.
All right, Chief, we can work on that. Let's give our next comment.
Thank you. Trustee Brady. I want to agree with what you're saying. I'm watching you guys do all these upgrades in our village from all these old systems we have in place, and we're going to the top of the line on everything we're choosing. We're fixing, we're getting up at times. I don't know of any company that doesn't give some kind of standardized test. And unfortunately, everybody that walks in our building, if they don't pass this strict test, they're not going to even be interviewed. And is a sergeant's test normal in most? I mean, is that a test that is normally given to become a sergeant? Is there a sergeant's test?
I think in most departments, yeah.
No. I just think it's concerning that we're going to pull out any type of way to judge. I mean, you have to have a way to come up with not just Johnny likes this one and Jill likes this one. You have to have something to base it on. To remove that is kind of concerning to me. That's all. That's all I wanted to say. I just think you should, it's kind of agreeing with what Trustee Panito was saying.
Thank you. Any other comments? Let the record show, if there are none, we take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. So ordered. This meeting is adjourned.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I should note that this is a special meeting that was posted properly by the clerk's office. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Vandenberg.
Present.
Trustee Yonker.
Here.
Trustee Panito.
Here.
Trustee Berg.
Here.
Trustee Brady.
Here.
Trustee Glatz.
All present and accountable. Thank you. Item number 1, receive comments from staff. Is there any comments from the staff this evening? Very good. We'll continue on. Item 2, receive comments from the public. Anybody from the public wish to address the board?
I'll be talking on behalf of the Tinley Park Car Show, which is something we've been doing for over 6 years. Now they've imposed new regulations on us, which are getting everybody mad, and they're actually pulling out of the car show. Now the VFW, Ed and Joe's, Durbin's, and quite a few other businesses depend upon that car show once a week. And when you take this away from them, they're losing money. The VFW is an example. If they don't have their money from their T-shirts that we sell and the things like that, when a veteran comes in and asks for money, we don't have it. If he comes in and asks for food, we can't give him food because we don't have the monies to buy the food. When you impose these different things that you've done down there on the show, it's just literally turned a majority of the drivers off. I have some here that are car people, and they will tell you exactly what I'm saying. We need to put it back the way it was and leave it that way because it worked for 6 years. And now we're worried about I don't know if I should mention it, but I was told that they're worried about terrorists coming to the car show. Never even in 6 years did we even think about that. But we need to straighten it out so that these guys don't all pull away and go back to Frankfurt or go back to other shows, and the village of Tinley Park is going to lose. Okay, any questions for me?
Yeah, I got a couple questions for you, sir. Thank you very much for being the representative for the gentlemen that are in the audience today. I know that I've reached out to a couple of people, I'm not sure if you're in the audience or not, and responded to you in your inquiries. Can you maybe address what the issue is that you folks are having?
What
I
we're
understand
doing-
that it's closed, and just for everybody that's not
Okay.
familiar with this is a recommendation from our police department
Right.
to close. I don't know if anybody's been to cruise night up here, but I could tell you that.
This gentleman was.
Okay,
I
well,
came
in
through there.
future years, there was about a 1.5 to 3 feet buffer between vehicles that are traveling down Oak Park Avenue and pedestrians and vendors and car enthusiasts that are obviously having their vehicles shown. Creates a public safety situation. Police department made a recommendation based upon other municipalities that also close their streets down. And we decided that it would be the best thing for not only the vendors or the car enthusiasts as well as the patrons, because I for one, with 2 small kids, I mean, my focus is not terrorism. My focus is somebody picking up the phone for 15th of a second and swerving a foot. Taking out a kid, an adult, heaven forbid it's not either one of those and it's one of your vehicles. I could see that being a priceless issue as well. Again, your grievances, your inquiries are extremely valid, and they're not the best. This is not the best case scenario. Don't get me wrong, as well as what I put in my email. There are shortfalls with the plan. I hope that it's a plan that we can continue to work out. But I think that the grievance that was filed was that, or noted, was that with the closing of the road, patrons that are there, or gentlemen that have their vehicles that are there, are not able to leave before the end of the show.
That's correct.
Right. I think that there was some plans that we could try to have a staging area for people that are planning on leaving early. There is an exit plan in the subway lot, and maybe it's not the ideal situation where you want to be parked, but we are taking everything into account for the safety of everyone that's attending the show, as well as the people that are walking by and admiring your vehicles. And furthermore, obviously a larger global situation, which is terrorism, as you pointed out. I mean, these are legitimate situations that are happening across the globe. People are using vehicles instead of bombs and guns and knives. They're driving into large pedestrian-laced areas. And I see the
Okay.
gentleman behind you is irritated, so I'll shut my mouth.
Okay. Well, he's referring to the businesses that are losing money because you close down that one section from Subway going down that way, which I don't understand. You put a truck and trailer out in the middle of the street, and then the people that are down there are told they can't leave till 8 o'clock. Now, if an emergency came up for my wife at home, I would leave. I don't care what they said. All right? How can you tell me that I can't leave at any particular time? I mean, within reason now, and that I can't go because I've got to get somewhere. You're stopping me from going. That's one of the issues. The other issue is that they put that truck and trailer right in the middle of the street, which literally cuts off the whole show. It cuts it in half. You've got people that are walking over there, they walk up and here's this big truck and trailer right in the middle of the road. People don't even want to come down this way anymore. Again, hurting the VFW, hurting Subway, hurting Ed and Joe's, hurting Durbin's, and the people that are making the tax money and paying taxes in this town. I don't think it's correct, and I think it should just be brought back the way it was. There was no problem for 6 years, and you're saying now that we're going to have problems. I doubt very much.
I'm not saying that at all, and I certainly am not going to argue back and forth over what the scenario is best and what's not, but I could tell you that that could change in a moment's notice. I mean, 6 years, it's a great track record. I'm thankful for that, thank God. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if something were to happen, the first person they're going to yell at, second person, So I could tell you this, sir, is that
Here, Tom.
there have been other options that have been prepared by village staff. I reviewed it. I sent it over to the police department. The police department still stands firm on their position. I mean, they're the experts. All I could do is follow their direction. If there is another alternative that we could follow that will work out for everyone, certainly all ears. And I'm not saying that this is the best scenario. I'm certainly not telling you that.
So for over the 6 years, you guys haven't had any issues?
No, sir. No,
Yes,
sir, nothing.
Me personally speaking, the problem I have with the new setup is, I went there the other week and there was 5 cars there.
Yes, sir.
I-
Right.
The,
Yes.
I truly understand the safety aspect of it, but
Was that last Tuesday? Or?
Yes.
Was it
Last
raining that
Tuesday,
night?
We had 3 cars
We had 3
from
cars.
Subway up to Tians.
What was the weather that evening? Was it?
It was fine.
It
It was
was
fine.
all right.
It wasn't raining?
It was a little cooler.
cars have started going to the, I think it was the Riviera.
Thank you.
I think the Riviera or something, I heard another place
Well,
that they're starting to go.
That's his show.
I run that
That's
one.
his show.
And-
He runs that.
And in my opinion, that's why it's called cruise night.
That's right.
To be able to come and go.
You come
That's
and go,
And
and
you come and you cruise down the street.
I don't know, maybe we put some speed bumps or something along the way,
Well,
but I
Listen,
I think the whole,
Just open up the side of the street.
You got cops there patrolling all night, too.
right.
I think all the businesses up and down Oak Park Avenue, are struggling from.
Yes.
Well, they are.
There's one of them right back there.
But the way that you now made this cruise night, you made it more of a safety issue, meaning that if you were to come down and want to leave down Oak Park, they would stop you at the corner, make you turn around and go back. They want you to go through business entrances like the Subway or VFW. The problem is you got people in the street admiring the cars. You take a bigger risk cutting through these places than you did going down Oak Park Avenue. Again, like we said, 6, 7, 8 years, whatever the track record is, we never had an issue. And anything that happened in Oak Park happened outside of the cruise night. We don't have any problems. The car guys themselves, we maintain, we watch each other, we watch people. We want it to keep on going. By that being said, we make sure that nobody acts up, nobody gets out of hand, nobody's too drunk, or anything like that. It's all part of what we do. We take more or less control more than the police do.
Yeah, I remember going there before years ago, you'd see 800 people there.
Yeah.
Correct.
You know, it'd be jam-packed, all the stores
Right.
were swamped.
That's right.
And now
Correct.
it's like a ghost town.
That's it.
Well,
I
you
think
know,
we
You
should-
gotta understand.
Well, it's only been
the
1 week.
car
It's
people
it's
themselves.
only been
It's been like
it's
one
only
week.
the third week.
It hasn't been
Trustee
like
Glass.
Have you been
Well,
there?
you know,
This is,
Yes.
I have, and,
We- we-
and I don't know that this is the proper form to do this in. So what I'm gonna ask is that the gentleman from Tinley Park Cruise Night, if you'd like to schedule a meeting, certainly come on in, sit down with our police department, sit down with our marketing department. I will be there, and we can talk through the situations and see if we can come up with a better solution. Understand that professionals are the ones that are directing this, not,
Well,
this isn't like
I'm not saying
I'm
they're
sitting
not
up here and I'm
professionals.
waving it around and
Let
I
me
want
say
to
this.
close.
I don't know
I'm
what
not
your
trying
name
to
is.
close business on Oak Park Avenue. I understand there's
Mr. Mayor.
grievances. Some up here are trying to
I'm
make
not
this a
saying they're not
political issue.
professionals.
It's not that at all.
They're not professionals
We're
at what
trying,
we
we're
do.
trying to be,
Because there's no one down there anymore?
Public
All right.
safety.
Right. Go ahead.
this is public comment.
Mr. President, if I can state a couple of comments.
Certainly.
Basically, I'm a retired police officer, okay? I understand public safety to the utmost. I've been around the village of Tinley Park for 25 years as a resident. Well aware of what goes on here with this public safety issue. One of the things that was concerned about egress system, emergency systems coming in, the question is that I walked down the street tonight, and your truck that you have down there from Public Works, resemblance of a war zone. It's a barricade I don't think is acceptable for proper road blockage. I also asked the community service officer on hand there, I said, who's the operator of this truck? What if I had to move the truck like now? I don't know. He wasn't there. So that's a big problem you have right there. So if we're worried about asking the what-if question when the balloon goes up, I could appreciate the fact that you're being a new mayor, you don't want to answer that what-if question when the issue happens, if there is a speeding auto or a vehicle that gets out of hand. I just think that the situation is out of hand because the businesses are losing revenue. Durbin's is a ghost town compared to the way it used to be. That south end of this Oak Park Avenue is dead. And I don't know the reasons are for what you're gonna do and how you're gonna resolve it, but the answers that you have there right now are not acceptable to the businesses. So maybe it's a revenue issue, I don't know. But the thing is The barricades that are up right now are not acceptable.
All right, we could certainly look at that.
I would be more than happy to sit down with you.
If you could, can you leave your information with Donna? She's sitting in the front row. I don't know if you have it or
Yeah,
not.
Donna knows me.
Okay, well then we'll look and get something on the schedule here in the
Okay,
very near
I
future.
would be, and I would bring a couple of my people along also.
By all means.
Okay,
Certainly.
thank
all
you very
ears.
much, man.
You're welcome. Thank you. Mr. Barton?
Excuse me. My name is Roger Barton. A lot of you people know me. I too am a retired police officer, and I've been a resident of Tinley Park for 70 years. I've been here longer than anybody else in this room. Probably longer. Probably longer than any two of you put together. The cruise nights, the way they have been run up until this year, were one of the most popular events that this town has ever seen. And granted, you have the block party. It's a once-a-year event. You have the music in the plaza. It has nothing to do with the street. But the cruise nights are the most popular events for the community. It brings people out of their homes in downtown, down to downtown Tinley, where we want people to come to. We want them to support our businesses, not only so the businesses thrive, but so that the village reaps the tax benefit from the sales tax that comes in. So I would encourage the board to return us back to the system we had. There can be measures put in place to keep cars from going too fast. For the most part, they couldn't go over 2 or 3 miles an hour anyway, so because the traffic would back up so much. But you could put speed bumps across the way you have them in front of Fulton School. Those could be put up every 100 yards or so, whatever. But again, my final point, these are very popular in the community. It brings the people out, brings them downtown, and they spend their money and support the businesses. So I would encourage you to put it back the way it was in the past and let it run by itself. They were fine for 6 years, and they'll be fine in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burns.
Thank you for allowing me to address you. My name is Jim Hudick. I'm the commander of the VFW. I belonged to the post for quite a few years. I think it's going on 12 years. I've been here at the beginning like Roger. Roger put this thing together way back when, and it's been a great thing for the families and people coming out. I run into a lot of people I don't see all the time, and everybody talks about this. I've got friends that live in the western suburbs. They talk about this show. It's great. We hear nothing but great things about it. Change this. I think it was a big, big mistake, Mayor. And I know that the police department's trying to do their best for all the citizens. But be honest with you, think about it for a second. The terrorists, are they going to hit Tinley Park? There's no way. Is it impossible that they might? Yeah, it could happen. But it's more, they're going to go downtown Chicago, hit the banks, the big buildings. Just look at past history where they've gone. Now, of course, there was in Paris where they ran them down with the cars. I agree, I give you that. But there's a number of things that can be done. I heard somebody say the speed bumps, and that's what I was going to bring up. Fulton School, you've got them on 171st Street. There, when school's in. When it's out, you take them out. You put that on the southbound lanes And that'll slow down, you won't have to worry about it and leave everything else the way it was. Because, you know, and this is hurting financially. And people are getting very upset about it, business owners, which ultimately affects the tax revenues. And the tax revenues are what you use to buy things, all this equipment you were talking about a little bit, salaries going on. You know, I'm going to just ask you, please think about putting that back, because it's just, in my mind, it was a boondoggle the way it is. But I said my piece. Think about it. Needless to say, we'd like to see it back the way it was, because there's an old saying, if it's not broke, don't fool with it.
Thank you. Okay, we'll get that meeting set up. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. No other comments? Item 3, receive comments from the board. Comments from the board. I'd ask item 4, and ask for a motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss A, the setting of a price for sale or lease of property owned by the public body, and B, litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Yonker, seconded by Ms. Berg. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll be in executive session.
Thank you.